With that, I think we're in full swing. We have a whole agenda set. We've heard from Mircea earlier a few of the geographic elements that define Romania's interconnectivity opportunities and must-dos. We've also heard from Deputy Prime Minister Borg why this matters now, today, not tomorrow, not in the coming years, but from today. We also heard last night that this is not happening in a vacuum, that this is happening ultimately under, over 25 years of work that actually yielded results. Maybe not all the results we would have liked, not all the expectations, not fulfilled all the expectations of Romania's citizens or Romania's businesses, be it national capital or FDI capital. But at the same time, Romania is in the position to having this conversation, partly because of that work done. The purpose of our conversation, and I hope it's going to be a conversation and we're going to involve as well the public, is to sketch, when it comes to interconnectivity, what are the actual opportunities, but also what are some of the practical obstacles. We have an exceptionally good panel, though I was informed by my colleagues that it looks exceptionally male as well. We always try to address this for practical reasons. Sorana, who's a member of the Aspen Institute and a supporter of activities, had to urgently leave Bucharest, so we couldn't have her presence in the panel. But I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Văduva first, with a first question to you. You're double-hatting. You come with the experience of an investment banker, and now you run a state-owned enterprise that is key when it comes to national and trans-regional interconnectivity. What was your toughest challenge in your day job from day one?
Thank you very much. It's a difficult question. I think when I joined the company, we're together with our board, because I'm not alone, we're a group of administrators. We are faced with two challenges. One is to modernize the company, make it more efficient. And the second one, which came along the way, is the dramatic change that happened within the energy sector in Romania. So from a consumer country that actually was a net importer, suddenly, the consumption in Romania has declined, and suddenly we are looking at potential surpluses from the present production, right? At the same time, the exploration in the Black Sea confirmed resources. At the same time, the Southern Europe came alive with amazing resources in the Caspian Sea, in Egypt, in Cyprus, the Iranian deal, and so on. So suddenly, we were faced with two amazing opportunities. One, that we as a country could become a net exporter of energy. Secondly, we are facing with the necessity to tap into a new source of gas, which is called the Southern Corridor, which Nabucco was the first attempt to tap into that source, but clearly we needed to continue that attempt to actually think a little bit past the next 10 years. We have to keep in mind that even with the Black Sea resources, the life of the Romanian resources as they are known right now is 10 years. So we need to think within 20 years, how do we assure ourselves the security of supply? So tapping into the Southern Corridor is becoming a necessity. Not only that, but we don't want to be excluded from that transportation route, which is going to become an essential source for Europe. So to have these pipelines going around Romania, it's a threat to our future. So with the help of the European Union and the understanding of the European Union, we were able to put together the BRUA project, which is the first step of larger endeavors in that direction of connecting to Southern Europe. Now, we need to do this efficiently, and one important aspect, because they have to come together, we can only do these things without putting an undue burden on the Romanian society. So that we try to reflect in our ability to save money. So I think I think we brought savings between 150 and 200 million lei every year. That affects positively the tariffs, allows us to build further the future without increasing the tariffs in Romania. At the same time, we had the support of the government. We continue to have the support of the government. I think there are probably not unconstructive discussions with respect to tariffs. I have to point out that the transportation tariffs, the wholesale transportation tariffs of Transgaz, are less than 10% of the consumer of the final consumer price. So anything that we do is not going to affect, from a tariff perspective, significantly the well-being of the Romanian consumer. So we need to balance this with the goal of also securing the Romanian consumer for decades and decades. So we believe that the BRUA project that the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned, and it's an important step in assuring the future. It's an important step of adding value to the potential explorations and new resources that we find. No producer will come if they are not assured the possibility of commercializing their merchandise. So in principle, we're thinking we have two goals: short-term, becoming more efficient, beginning this particular integration process within the Europe, and long-term, to make sure that we have the proper avenues to secure the supply, not only for the next 10 years, but for the next 20, 30 years. And in that, another important project that I would like to mention is our interconnection with Moldova. It's another important project that allows transparency of prices, new sources of supply for a neighboring country that is important for us. And so all these things not only should not only just integrate Romania, should bring added value long-term and security, which is, as far as energy is concerned, it's an important aspect. Because otherwise, if we don't do these steps, all these projects, even the simplest one, takes 5 years. Yeah. To build something more dramatic, it takes 10 years. So if we don't start now, we could be faced with a particular problem within the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go a bit later in discussing what does that mean for the financing side and how this is perceived by capital markets. But before that, I would also like to include in the conversation the other networks, the logistics hubs, the interconnectivity that is brought about by infrastructure investment. And the way I would like to do this, by inviting Geoff, Clarke to intervene, is to give a recent example. The CEO of a large energy multinational was talking about a paradigm shift when it comes to governance. And he was not talking about private sector governance, he was talking about public sector governance. When it comes to a shift from classical hydrocarbon-driven energy sector to a sector that is interconnected, smart, digitalized, controlled both by the consumers, whether domestic or industrial, and that forces authorities, regulators, politicians, governments, but also companies to a large degree, whether SMEs or multinationals, to gear up to raise the level of transparency, interoperability, transparency to each other, because there's a different way to operate a gas interconnectivity when they cover an entire region as opposed to just the country. National grid operators need to be able to work together, whether electricity grid or gas pipelines. Gas markets need to be sophisticated enough. Regulators nationally and regionally need to be sophisticated enough to be able to operate. Now that has positive impact, and it turns, when it comes to natural resources, potentially a Dutch disease, a resource curse for one or another resource, into a strength when countries, governments, and companies do this, do this aligned. The same applies in infrastructure investment in general. Now, with that, my question to you is, how do you see Romania's role in the region as a next stage, not just in terms of what are the priorities, but what's the next stage when it comes to logistics hubs and transport infrastructure interconnection?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome and regards from the north of England. Often you get speakers perhaps from London, but I'm actually from between Liverpool and Manchester, and we see ourselves as a gateway on the west side of Europe, and indeed Liverpool, where near where I live and where I flew on Blue Air to come to this conference, a nice new service actually connecting the UK to Romania, and that's really important, and there's lots of new services, and you have a lovely country, and hopefully more UK people will visit for holidays. But that's an indication of connection and connectability, really. And I was delighted to come and work with the local AECOM team in doing the, helping with the National Transport Master Plan. And I think for me, looking in at where Romania is, absolutely, I totally agree, it's a good place for a regional hub. And I don't know whether we have an opportunity today to show some of the slides that I have prepared, but in there, I've highlighted the fact that, Constanța, a really good international port. You've got the Danube with great connections. We think that both the railway network, if we can get more maintenance and to get that more reliable, clearly there's an opportunity for more roads and connectivity. But for us, whether you want to use the new Silk Road terms or whether you look at north-south connectivity, which is just as important as far as we're concerned, but actually connectivity through perhaps the Ukraine and links down into Romania are important. And I think the role for government really is facilitating logistics, making it an easy place to do business, and then logistics companies will choose Romania to come here. So I think the stability that we were hearing both last night and this morning is very important. Getting the infrastructure is right, but it's part of a package of other things, which includes new skills for new logistics leaders, improvements in energy provision, so electric trains. You've got a nice upcoming energy sector. You're using gas, clean energy from wind farms also. So I think the country is doing a lot to reduce your carbon footprint. So I think all told, there's a lot going on, and I don't know whether you can see the slides, but probably if you go to the very last but one slide, if you go sort of keep going through. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, so certainly us as AECOM, we were very positive towards the National Transport Plan, and there's key things for investment, but don't just take our word for it. Colliers, who are a well-known logistics investor, every year they do a logistics market ranking. There's a number of cities there that you can see, and importantly, they're saying that there's a growing trend in Europe towards the east, And although at the moment Bucharest is not yet on there, you can see that you've got Poland, you've got Budapest, you've got Prague, Bratislava, all important emerging cities. And our prediction is within the next 10 years is that Romania will be on that. And at the same time, the World Bank also do a logistics performance index, which again is a very important, well looked at thing. And again, at the moment, Romania is about 40th, but actually with things like improving customs and improving the infrastructure, you could well go up that list. And I think looking forward, that's the sorts of things that we would like to encourage, really. So, maybe if there's time, I might cover one or two of the other slides, but carry on with your questions for now.
I just want to put you on the spot right now with something that your introduction kind of is bound to create as a question for the audience. You're British. And one of the things on the mind of political leaders in Europe, but also citizens, is the discussion related to UK in the EU, Brexit, whatever you want to frame it. Is the sector, the logistics and infrastructure development sector, worried about this? And how would that impact one way or another the development of European
Okay, yes, I'm not surprised of the question, actually. I personally definitely will be voting for the UK to stay in Europe. I think at the moment it is actually worryingly closer than I expected it to be. I think from a logistics point of view, and that is what my career is, companies make decisions on the basis of international trade and international positioning. And in many ways, interregional things are generated by the price, the productivity, the average journey times, and connectivity. And to a certain extent, I think a lot of business will make the decisions to say, come to Romania, because it is seen as a good place to invest. It's stable. You've got a good, and you need a good, well-trained workforce with modern skills, IT skills, and we're talking about the internet and various things, and all of that is important and a given. I think for me, if the UK votes to come out, it's partly driven because we sometimes take a bad press from what goes on at Brussels. But nevertheless, for stability, I think the EU has been a tremendous force for good. And I would see it as a retrograde step if we come out. But nevertheless, I think you can't move where the geography is. And I still think the UK does want to trade with the EU in the same way as your 9 biggest trading countries are European Union countries now. So are ours. And hopefully that will stay the same. But I'm personally a bit worried that actually a lot of international investors, say from the Far East, might not choose to invest in the UK if we leave. But actually, I suppose that might be good news for Romania, because it is an alternative, isn't it? But anyway, a little bit of an uncertain time for us. So we'll see what happens in 3 weeks' time.
Thank you, John. Daniel Mazilu. To complete this series of intervention, let's look a little bit on the railroad, on the road infrastructure and transport from the perspective of road transport logistics, but not exclusively. Last night we've heard, and Deputy Prime Minister Borg, but also Dragoș Păslaru talked yesterday about the importance of railroads and what that would bring to the GDP. But in general, transport as the bloodline for an export-oriented economy. We've heard discussions about the potential of Romanian agriculture sector and what an investment in contemporary methods of, the whole cycle of agribusiness in Romania, but that also depends on the quality of logistics and transport infrastructure. So what's your stance on this, and where do you see it developing in the coming months and years?
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm very honored to be here on behalf of the Romanian Association of International Road Transport. We represent here road industry, transport industry, and last night I heard the good news from the Ministry of Transport that we have finally, let's say an updated version of the master plan of Romania, who will enter in the parliament for the vote, for the final vote this summer. So it's very important to have this point of the beginning. We will have a master plan approved in this summer. But I want to underline three important points, three important problems of our infrastructure. I want to remind you that in our history, we have built a very little highways, very little number of highways. But why? Because we have built with fear. Money was not a problem. Politics also was not a problem, but the fear to be conquered by the neighbors, it was a major problem for the infrastructure of Romania. So today, we must pass beyond this fear. We must have a new plan, a new mentality to build something huge, to think big, first of all. So, first idea is to pass beyond this fear. But today we have another fear, a fear of signing contracts. So we have passed from one fear to other fear. We are captured between two fears. It's very important for these people, for this country, to pass over the second fear, to have, let's say, something practical. So this is let's say, my first idea, our first idea to have a brave attitude. And AECOM put us a brave version of the future through this master plan. We have, let's say, an opportunity to have 2,000 kilometers of highways. But the problem is, it's not with the master plan. The problem is with our attitude. And now we are discussing here about this attitude. We want to have Romania as a regional hub. We want to have more logistics, more road, more infrastructures. And by telling you this, I want to explain the second problem of the infrastructure. We have in Romania a lot of strategies. Every ministry has his own strategy. We have a strategy for the infrastructure, master plan, okay? We have a strategy for the defense. We have a strategy for the trade. But the problem is that these all strategies are not connected between them. It's a major problem. For example, we have a strategy for road infrastructure, the master plan, but we don't have a strategy for the logistics, which are very connected between them. So it's important to have a new, let's say, strategy for logistics, and after all, to have a meta strategy for all the plan for Romania. It's very important. And finally, I want to underline a very important issue. We had a lot of problems with contracts in Romania, a lot of claims in transport infrastructure. I want to propose here two important things. To have strategic responsibility. It's a new concept, to have a strategic responsibility in Romania for the future of Romania with, let's say, a few persons very responsible for the plan of the Romania, a manager, let's say, a manager. And also, I want to come back to the culture of the arbitration in the claims, because you have a lot of delays in this problems related to infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Mazilu. Indeed, overcoming the concept of an isolated and self-reliant economy is a critical element, as is going beyond the personal responsibility, institutional responsibility, political responsibility of actually making decisions. When it comes to strategies, the discussion last night, as you may remember, has given me, at least, significant hope that the effort of people like Dragoș Tudorache and his colleagues in the cabinet, but in particular the attention that the Prime Minister gives to this horizontal element, the fact that a government cannot operate in silos, and while the ministerial responsibilities and departmental responsibilities for certain areas is critical to actually be able to deliver the projects that whether master plan or energy interconnectivity or railroad road infrastructure development requires, but at the same time these need to be correlated with the whole set of economic priorities. Now, all this is mute if we don't convince those that can match national funding with the significant amount of capital we need to make available for such projects, whether it's the master plan or building new pipelines. And BRUA does have the advantage of being a relatively low-cost solution that looks at existing infrastructures and uses something that is already there, but it still requires the companies and the states that participate in the project to raise significant amounts of capital. Now, we've heard that Romania, Bucharest looks good. All the speakers have said that there's a circumstantial set of conditions that make it a good moment to do that. Now, how does that look from London and from the City of London in particular? And what do you think capital needs in order to respond to this call? Sorry, Mihai, Dănilă.
All right, thank you, Andrei. Very glad to be here at Aspen Institute, close family. So I think, look, I think the points raised by my peers were valid. I think, first of all, looking at the macro picture, you know, GDP-wise and from, you know, as an emerging market, Romania looks very, very attractive, and I think my colleague would agree. I think what we would need to do at a national level would be to have a clear strategy, and I'm very glad that that's being developed, but more than that, you need a predictable strategy, and you need something that's going to be implemented and that people can say that, you know, in 1 year or 2 years time or 3 years time, it's going to be the same. You know, if you look back at, you know, how we did some of the privatizations, for example, where we were working with IMF, you have a lot of situations where there was a schedule, there was a strategy, but then, given various reasons, things were not accomplished or they were derailed. I think what needs, you know, if you're an investor, you need to make sure that, especially, you know, you're talking about infrastructure, you're talking about logistics, you're looking long term. Any investor that would come and match the financing, or any bank for that matter, they would come and come with a horizon for 10, 20 years. These are very long periods of time. So they will need to make sure that what we agree today and the investment case that, you know, they present to their board today will be the same in 10 years from now. So I think that's very important. The second thing is to make sure that they have access to decision makers and informed decision makers. So we need to make sure that, first of all, and I think Manuel Costescu and Vice Prime Minister Borg are doing a fantastic job in that respect. I think you need to make sure that the people that represent the Romanian government are on par with the people that come and ask how they can invest, how they can fund the various projects. You cannot have on our side, you know, not a weak team, but a non-informed team, because then the people on our side, on the Romania side, make promises and make assumptions that obviously they cannot back 1 or 2 or 3 years later, or whenever they're not in office anymore. So I think you need to have a very strong team on our side, on Romania's team, that will negotiate on a equal footing with the various investors. And I think, you know, communication is also important. If you look how you can fund various projects, you know, you have various pension funds like CPPIB and other huge investment funds that are hungry for infrastructure. They look across Europe, and we were, for example, on a deal, and they came and they paid 13 times EBITDA on an infrastructure project, which for anybody that understands the multiples, it's ludicrous, it's insane. So they paid that amount. Why? Because they could not find the yield somewhere else. They're hungry for yield. They cannot get that in Western Europe. So if we could, and we have that opportunity as a country, to show them good investment opportunities, cases where we can say, look, you come, you invest for 10, 20 years in a highway or in a railway system or energy project, and they can realize that investment case and they see an attractive, they will come. And they will come, and once, you only need 1 or 2 or 3 of these sovereign or quasi-sovereign funds to come and invest in a project, for the other universe to say, okay, if CPPIB or ADIA or somebody else came in, they invested, they have a good track record, nothing happened since they invested, so everything goes according to plan, more will come. And it's like a, it's like a snowball that keeps on growing. It's fantastic. That's one. Then second, and I think this is an untapped opportunity for Romania, you look at high yields market, right? If we're talking about energy, high yield always was a major investor and backer of energy companies. Do we have any high yield companies or bonds of Romanian energy companies in London? No, unfortunately. So that's clearly a financing opportunity that we're missing right now, and that we could definitely address. How can you do that? It's the same thing. You need communication, you need transparency, you need people to, once they come and they invest, they need to make sure that that company, we were talking about earlier about governance, that, it's a well-governed company, that, the investment policy is there, the projects will be there, the management is good, is solid. Those are, 101 minimum factors that somebody that would put their money would require. So I think if we do all these steps, we could access all these various financing opportunities. But we need to have that.
Just a quick question, and really not wanting to put you on the spot, but it's an important question, equally important to the one having to do with the potential political and economic impact of Brexit. But this time I'm more interested in the atmospherics in the City of London, of how Eastern Europe and Central and Eastern Europe in particular look. And you read the media and you hear about the worries about what Poland and Hungary, some of the tigers of the region, when it comes to FDI, are going through politically. How significant is that? How important is in the daily decision-making of investors?
Look, political stability is one of the factors that matter a lot in any investment decision, especially in emerging markets. I think definitely right now Romania is a bright spot because you had various issues. Like you mentioned, I mean, Hungary was the first one to start with the various issues they had with banks and so forth. We're not going to mention. Poland, unfortunately, given the latest political events, also seems to be a question mark. So Romania, for now, look, you have a technocratic government that's doing a great job so far, at least from London. You know, there's great dialogue. There's, you have the Bucharest Stock Exchange president coming to London, meeting investors. 2 weeks ago, there was a Romania Investment Day where, the Romanian embassy together with some of the cabinet ministers came with, strong investment opportunities, good presentations. And, we were talking with Manuel Costescu as well. It's very important that what they're doing now, and I think they're doing a good job, is clearly telling investors, look, we've all heard, you all heard about Romania, emerging markets, Central Eastern Europe, and the various issues. Let me tell you why you should come. And this is, 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 reasons why you should come. And by the way, this is where you can actually invest your money. And they have the clarity. It's not, oh yeah, it's an emerging market somewhere in Central Eastern Europe. I know that there were some wave of immigrants that we were not, no. It's, this is the macro, this is the GDP growth, it's facts, and these are the investment opportunities, and people start to listen. And look, from a very factual perspective, the GDP growth in Romania, compared with the rest of Europe, looks very attractive. for the upcoming period. So it's a good view from London, 100%.
Thank you, Mihai. Well, while to some degree the FDI game is competitive and countries do tend to think into my gain is your loss and the other way around, ultimately this is also a cooperative game. And countries in the region, from the Baltics to Poland to Hungary to Romania, need to cooperate. When it comes to projects that you're working on, whether investment projects or energy projects or logistics and infrastructure projects, how do you feel that this is going today? Do you feel an impetus to continue that, to still think big, think European, think across the region, or there's a closing down, a sense of renationalizing and avoiding ambitious projects?
Yes, from my point of view, one of the projects I'm working on at the moment is a fascinating one, and it's called Rail Baltica. And again, it's a European Union based and mostly paid for project, but it's looking at a whole new European gauge railway linking from central Poland right up to Tallinn. And indeed, the Finns are also quite keen on having a tunnel right under the Baltic Sea, maybe even to connect into that in the next 20, 30 years. Now, if that wasn't ambitious, I don't know what is really. But actually, the thought of having a new 800-kilometre electric railway connecting into the Central European, Trans-European railway network is very exciting. And Two projects we've done related to the main railway line are both for Lithuania, that's looking to connect their capital city into that railway, because originally it wasn't in. And the second one is for Riga, which is the middle of the three Baltic states, to actually have a new intermodal terminal, which is of international standing, and it will connect into the main west-east railway line to Moscow. At the same time, the main roads as well will connect very close to where we're choosing for the logistics centre. Now, that's a relatively small country in terms of population, not much more than 1.5 to 2 million. But Riga is the centre powerhouse for their country, and it's an exciting project that hopefully will get built, because it really does help connect Europe on a wider field. And in terms of why I've mentioned that one, is I still think going forward there is good connectivity between southeast Europe, i.e. Greece, Turkey, up through Bulgaria, Romania, up through Ukraine to the Baltic states. And although the EU has dropped using Corridor 9 as a term now, which is a shame, because I related to Corridor 9, and I know it's a very important corridor for opening up the northeast of Romania, really, and bringing extra transport infrastructure, which will help develop that side of your country, really. And again, I still think geographically, that north-south corridor is just as important as many others we're looking at.
Sure. If you think about it, one of the items that Romanian, Polish, Hungarian governments are arguing for, also considering what impact would have economically on the stability of the economy of Ukraine, a critical country when you think about the stability, economic and political, of the region. Any other comment on that? If not, my next question to you, before we open it up also to the audience, is we've heard from Mihai how this looks in the eyes of capital investors. The other question is, how can we make this more responsive to local needs, local businesses, whether it relates to price, the price they ultimately pay for utility, whether it's energy or other, or the impact generically via the growth in GDP that kind of trickles down to economic development of the country. Is there a one solution, or just simply by doing the right thing you get there? What's your take on that?
It's working? Yes. In principle, there is no one solution, and I think everything has to be planned extremely carefully, because the law of unintended consequences works fantastically well, unfortunately. So we actually, for example, with these large projects, we went through an extremely detailed analysis in order to make sure that it's neutral with respect to tariffs, even positive, if we can achieve that. And of course, all these have been, there was a need to be approved by the national regulator, et cetera, et cetera. So I think certain steps have to be taken, because the nature of the investment could be detrimental if it's not taken carefully. I mean, with respect to future effects regarding the country's economy. So I don't think it's simple, and that's the reason you need groups of specialists, you need continuity, because the complexity of these projects, it's overwhelming, even for somebody who's really good at it, and even for somebody that works day and night about it. If you have a change of team, then it's easy from the outside to second guess somebody. Yeah. But the reality is that unless you have continuity, and unless people understand the detail, as you know, the Americans say, you know, the devil is in the details. And I think if we do not focus ourselves on the details, well, we will do the master plan and so on. If we don't focus to the next level of detail, then probably we're not going to succeed. So it's going to be difficult.
Daniel Mazilu, one of the things we're going to discuss extensively in the next panel is how the digitalization of all the economy, whether it's transport, energy, healthcare, what you name it, urban services, you name it, is going to impact the Romanian and European economy, and it's already doing it today. How do you plan for that transition, given that ultimately your sector is still a 20th century sector? It's a sector that is largely based on burning fossil fuel to move goods from point A to point B. So how's that, one, integrated in your sector's thinking in Romania? And second, how do you work with the authorities to address that transition?
Thank you very much. I said that we need more infrastructure, but we need also more infrastructure. Infrastructure is very necessary to help the infrastructure, because we have today a lot of, let's say, kilometers, a few of kilometers of highway, but we don't have infrastructure for the highway. We don't have panels, enough panels. It's let's say, it's a lack of infrastructure in Romania. So these two are connected. For the whole years, it's important to have information in the real time. In Romania also, but in Europe we have let's say, the infrastructure, a better infrastructure, and here Romania must do a very important step, but not after 10 years. Now, it's important to have now this step. Regarding our position, we are in the, let's say, the process of transition between all the transportation or the way of transport and the new way, digitalization of transportation or transport, as you want in the United States, transportation, I know. So it's important to have, let's say, huge help from the state, because in Romania, for the moment, we don't have, let's say, a plan for the infrastructure, a strategy for the infrastructure. So we are a little bit late in this point. Yes.
Yeah, if I could add as well, the logistics and the road freight sector across Europe is actually investing quite a lot of money now in modern IT. And to give you an example, we did a survey of UK operators last year. And there's now 87% of UK road transport has digital technology in the cab with real time and various things. And then you suddenly think, okay, well, that's interesting how that's changed over the last 5 years, actually. But increasingly, the UK road haulage market, particularly on international work, is now being dominated by Eastern European players. And to get business in the likes of Germany, Holland, and the UK, they are needing to have modern IT in their lorries. So if I gave you, this is a real example, on our key artery, which is from Calais to Dover, and 88% of the UK's road freight uses that one corridor alone. And to give you an idea, 21% of that freight is now run by Polish hauliers that have got all the modern kit and have very reliable modern lorries, well-trained drivers and systems. Now, we are seeing a few more Romanian lorries on the roads of the UK, but I guess you've got a bit to catch up to get. But I found that absolutely staggering that now on that corridor to Dover, there is only 12% UK hauliers, but there's 21% Polish. So it's now got to the point where just one country from Eastern Europe is now dominating our road haulage market, but they must have the IT to back it up.
Mircea, I have a quick question for Geoff Clarke. I had the pleasure to meet the Polish ambassador a number of times. We had great discussions about the connections, railway connections in particular. I was interested in what they've been doing in the past 8 years with railways in Poland. It's amazing, you know, with the Pendolino linking all the cities, etc., etc. The question is focused on what His Excellency the Ambassador had as a project very close to heart, which was a link between Poland on railway to Istanbul through Romania. And he said to me the best way to go is to build 300 kilometers through Ukraine. And I say, yeah, but it's different. No, you can do that. You have the bed, you have the power, you just need to build, 300 kilometers of railway European style. So let's do it. My question to you, sir, is, Geoff, very pragmatically, is that a feasible project? Politically, economically, technically, would it work? If it would, what would the deadlines be, the time frame be for that, and the major impacts? Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you for your question. Certainly a fascinating one. I think I've already hinted that I believe in the Corridor 9. So yes, in terms of trying to get journey times better, a new railway line would be great. The uncertainty with the political situation in the Ukraine is very sad and unfortunate, but I think in the fullness of time that will resolve itself. And on one of the slides I have, and we'll make them available to people later, there's quite a nice example at the moment of BMW cars being made in Germany that are now using the train to go to China. And one of the thoughts that I had from that example, which is getting there in only 15 days compared to going round by vessel, which is taking at least twice as long, depending which route you go. And I was thinking, with your two car manufacturers here, I thought, well, yeah, if you go through it, I think it's about the 5th slide through. I don't know whether you can keep going. One more. There we are, that one. Yeah, one of the things you see, so that's the Germany-China rail route, and perhaps unsurprisingly to most people in the audience, with the fact that DB Railways and DB Schenker are the #1 logistics company in Europe, it's not surprising that actually they are pushing ahead with the dominance of using that route. Now, there's several choices of route across. One is the traditional Trans-Siberian route, going around the North Way and via Moscow. We did a transport master plan for Kazakhstan a couple of years ago, and certainly Kazakhstan are a country that I think that can make a difference in terms of having a middle corridor.
Through Iran?
Sorry?
Through Iran?
Well, not necessarily. Probably it would come through Kazakhstan, through the oil fields in the west of the country, then through part of Russia into the Ukraine. And for me, connectivity from Romania railways up through Corridor 9 into Ukraine, turn right, and China's around the corner. So in many ways, if the Germans are doing it in 15 days, if you could actually look to work with the Ukrainians, I think, Kazakhstan are already doing their systems. I don't see why in 10 years' time you can't have daily trains from Bucharest to China carrying a range of products. Now, going forward, although the volume going up through the Ukraine, through Kiev, up to, let's say, to Tallinn, to the Rail Baltica, is an obvious route, really. And for me, a lot of blue-chip private investors, the likes of the Unilevers, the Procters & Gambles, and all these big companies take decisions on where to put their regional centres on ease of doing business and journey times and cost. So all of those, if you can get it better, will help Romania, I think. At the moment, they've chosen Katowice and Warsaw as their chosen bits for northeast Europe. Maybe Romania is well placed to be the southeast one.
Emeric Torkos is, so usually I know that money comes where is profit, or at least the possibility to make profit. And if we look to our country as a company, I think that the GDP is nice, but the profits made in Romania are relatively low. Mircea Joana, I think, said very well that there is a certain low quality administration and state governance so far, and this needs to be improved. And what I do see that until we are looking for plans and not having a business plan of the country, which rightly has been said, we have a big problem. The motorway which is not built. And with all the respects of foreign participants, you know, sometimes I'm thinking I'm comparing our country with Italy, where the Straits of Messina, where is no motorway, and there's no motorway really from Naples to the rest of Italy, you will see the difference between the two parts of the countries. These days, I spent some days on the Calafat Vidin area with a friend of mine, and if you count the number of ships on the Danube, you see that you are in an empty, very empty area. And then from here on, I think it's if all government, ONGs, everybody, because for instance, the Club Ferroviar in infrastructure has a very, and that's why Aspen, Club Ferroviar, and all the other ONGs to get together and with the state, then we can make something very quickly. And then we shall have a little bit money, and then we shall have people who is not leaving the country. And then we can start, I think we have to do very quickly very important things, because otherwise we shall not have profit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dan Mihalache. I have the same name with the famous guy in Romania. I'm a contributor to prestigious Q magazine for defense and security. And being myself a master mariner, member of Nautical Institute, my main issue is connected to Constanța Port. We have, of course, you mentioned a lot of transportations here. We are good. We are good in people. Just to give you two examples, I was very much impressed of the quality of the work delivered by our security. That is a real regional hub, and it's overseeing the cybersecurity for Ukraine and Moldova. And in the last days, I had the honor to visit the Human Center of NATO. You know, NATO has about 12 centers in Europe, and the best and the only exclusive for human elements, it's in our country at Oradea. My point is this one. How can we change? How can we improve? How can we boost the maritime transportation, which is by far is the cheapest one, because okay, we can transport by rail, but at the end of the day, we have to be economical. We have to make profit, otherwise it's useless. If we don't do major changes in the port of Constanța, we need infrastructure, okay? We need a lot of investments. There were attempts from foreign investors in the port of Constanța for years. They were very disappointed, they left. Right now, we are in contact with some guys from Qatar. They want to come back and invest. They have no connections. They cannot reach there. And how to say, the simplest issue that comes to my mind now, it's, of course, we have to promote people based on meritocracy. But the guy that is, how to say, in charge of this sector in Romania, it's a former football player. How can we change this? Yeah, the Ministry Secretary for Maritime Transportation is a former football player. And I am in contact with a lot of people in Port of Constanța. He was never involved in any changes in this sector. Thank you.
Okay.
We are speaking about opportunities in Romania since the revolution. And the meaning of this word, etymologically speaking, it's the shortest road to the port. This is the meaning of the word opportunities. The shortest road to, but in Romania we don't have right now such kind of road. We don't have a highway from Arad to Constanța. We don't have a highway from Iași to Constanța. We have, let's say, a part of highway from Bucharest to Constanța, but it's enough? It's not enough. So this is the first answer. It's necessary to have a connection between the custom and the port. First, it's necessary to have a better relation between the port and the airport, like in Netherlands. Each port has an airport, so it's important. And the third answer is the following. It's necessary to have a, let's say, powerful port, but also it's necessary to have a strategy for this port, because we have the port Constanța at the Black Sea, but we don't have, let's say, enough security at the Black Sea. So it's very important to have beyond the port a plan. I was a few years ago, I think 2 years ago, I participated at the launching of the ferry boat line between Batumi, Constanța, Iliușen. It's a triangle on the Black Sea. I was proud to be there to participate, very good. But when I saw the prices for the Romanian hauliers, it was a shock. So it's not good from this point of view. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering whether the... can you go back to my slides again with the two slides? One's on the Port of Constanța and one on the Danube. It might help illustrate... so if you go towards the beginning of the slides... That's it. Okay. So one of the things that we looked at when we were doing the master plan was actually... we used 2011 was our base year for traffic. And as you can see there was about 46 million tons then. But interestingly, you know, last year we were up to 56 million tons, and the dramatic growth has been in grain. And you now sort of very much Romania is a good cereal exporting market. And for me, it shows that actually if you can target the right markets, invest in the right terminals, because there's various investments gone into new terminals at Constanța, then you can actually make a real difference. And I think for me that's an example. So it might be LNG, it might be more cereals. It's actually identifying what sort of product is right to go through there. One of the things that perhaps was a little disappointing was the one for the container market. And of course, the best year, I think, for containers was in the mid-2000s. I think it was about 2007, when 1.4 million 20-foot equivalents, that's TEUs, went through the port. As you see from here, 2011, there's only 662, and I think it was about just under 700,000 last year. Now, the reason for mentioning that, it's running at half of what you did do 10 years ago. And I think it's important to actually think about world logistics and why the route is being chosen. And for us, part of the issue, and we spoke to a number of businesses, both in this country and in others, and if I quote you, I won't say who it was, but a well-known business in Hungary said that if we could get a journey time from Constanța through to Hungary of 25 hours, be it by train or by road, and they gave an option, they didn't mind, then Constanța will be our preferred route. Now, for me, that's just one illustration, but it shows the importance of improvements in your infrastructure. So in the case of railways, our view was if you could do more maintenance to avoid some of the disappointments in journey time, because the trains weren't arriving on time. And similarly, you know, we did have a whole suite of investments in roads as well as railways. But it's that assured 25 hours guaranteed was the difference. And of course, what was happening is the Hungarian company was choosing actually a port over and off another side of Europe, and was coming up through Skopje and getting into Hungary and Austria via another route. Now, for me, if you can get your inland routes better, then that's going to help you a lot and help Constanța a lot. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this slide is about the Danube. Go forward one, and the whole point when we were looking at the Danube, it's one of the best natural resources that you have. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, I didn't realise I could draw that. Yeah. So. At its best, the Danube, a number of years ago, moved 80 million tons across various countries. But importantly, it's connecting to, 8 major European countries. And for me, there's a lot more that can be done going back to the good old days of the Danube. And part of the issue here was actually improving the maintenance of the channel, which was partly Bulgarian, I think, in terms of investment in keeping the route open more days a year. Because one of the disappointments for our base year for the master plan was that actually on at least 60 days in the year, you couldn't run barges all the way up through your sector. Now, if we can get that reliability back on the route, then that, taking up the speaker's point, water freight is the cheapest if you can do it well, particularly for bulk trade, and I think that again is important. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, very quickly. I think this ties perfectly with my point before. So the gentleman mentioned somebody from Qatar being interested in investing and having nobody to have a dialogue with. I think it's very easy. If you want to develop either the Constanța port or the Galați or whatever area you want to invest, you have to have a clear investment case, and you have to have decision makers that an investor, be it from Qatar, Middle East or wherever, Singapore, so that an investor then can have a meaningful dialogue, and then obviously they can invest and they can see the returns and they can plan their investment. So I think this is exactly relates to my point. Furthermore, you have the Bucharest Stock Exchange, you have the Constanța port. That's something you could list and then attract also capital, be it from the pension funds that are local here, from the retail investor and so forth. So again, you need to structure these investments. It's very easy to say, you know, we want to have investments in Constanța port or in that highway or in that piece of infrastructure. That's a great strategy, but in order to actually make it happen, you need to have a meaningful case where somebody besides the government can come and say, okay, how much do you need? Do you need 20 million? Do you need 100 million? All right, what's the time horizon? What are the returns coming back? How is that gonna affect the consumer or the people that actually utilize that piece of infrastructure? What will that mean for their tariffs? All that needs to be structured. Otherwise, nobody, unfortunately, will come and say, why, you know, I have 1 billion, I'm going to invest in this port, I have no idea what's going to happen to my money, or if in 2 or 3 years, the strategy that I'm now placing this investment will still be there. So it's very easy. And obviously, again, you need, on our side, on the Romania team, you need the decision makers and you need the technocrats or politicians or both that actually understand and know what they promise to that investor. So you cannot have somebody saying, you know, our priority for this year is Constanța port. And then next year, another team comes and say, you know what, Constanța port is not a priority, hospitals are a priority. We're moving capital from that and we're leaving Constanța port as it is. It's very important that there's the meaningful long-term strategy that's consistent and that's predictable.
Thank you, Mihai. Văduva?
I've been asked to talk about LNG in the context of Constanța. And while I was thinking about the subject, since I'm not necessarily a specialist in LNG, it just occurred to me that we haven't addressed a major point. So going back to LNG in Constanța, gas is an extremely dangerous thing. So before we put an LNG terminal close to the city of Constanța, we need to think very deeply and hard about the situation. So even clearly we can put it a little bit further down, further up, and solutions can be found. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't. LNG now it's a little bit of a problem because of the gas prices and the profitability of actually investing in such a project. Nevertheless, is a security of supply concept also, because prices now are low, they could be 10 times higher, and then you don't have you're not prepared to access other sources. So but Black Sea is complicated, you cannot go through the Bosphorus Straits, and et cetera, et cetera. But more importantly, because we're talking about these projects, I think at some point in time, we need to have a national debate of where we need to go forward, because we're a country and we are actually encountering this problem as we speak. We've been here 3,000, 4,000 years. Well, between the environmental studies and the archaeological studies, we got a problem. I don't think there's a piece of land of 1 hectare where you're not going to find something, and everything stops. So there has to be a decision, you know, how we want to move forward. People need to understand in life you need to make choices, and they're not easy choices. You need to make sacrifices. I'm not the person to make that decision. I'm just saying that if we want to have that highway, if we want to have that, you know, pipeline, et cetera, it needs to be efficient because it needs to create value and so on. If it comes with incredible cost related to certain issues, environmental or archaeological issues, then the project becomes is not feasible anymore. And I'm not saying, but I think there's a magnitude about certain subjects. There's a magnitude what's important for us as a nation and what we can give in a little bit. And I think this is an important discussion, because otherwise we're going to stop every kilometer and we are not going to move forward. And the people that work in road construction know very well this problem, and now I'm encountering it, and it's a serious problem. And I don't have a solution, and it's not me or it's not us who would decide that. I think it has to be a national decision. It's the decision of the country how it needs to move forward, and sacrifices have to be made. if people decide in one way or another. There's no optimal solution. There's no ideal solution here. And we need to stop thinking in absolutes and make choices. There's no perfection. We can aim for perfection and nothing is going to happen for sure. We're just going to need to make sacrifices, and the sooner we decide what sacrifices we need to make, we can move forward with a lot of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. That reminds me of a conversation about cadastre, about territorial management. We've had a meeting with the mayor of Rome a few months ago in the Aspen context, and the question there was archaeology, Rome, metro development, urban development. We're going to discuss this in the last panel this afternoon. Those are important questions, whether it's how fast you go through these things, how much you give to those in charge of clearing those aspects, whether they're environmental or historical or cultural, or whether your legal framework regarding expropriation is precise or property clarity is there in order to develop whether road, city, urban, or energy infrastructure development. One thing that Mihai said in his last intervention triggered an obvious connection. We've titled the panel Gateway for two reasons. One, because it links to actually what we're talking about, whether energy or transport, goods or services, but also thinking about a project at the Aspen Institute and private sector partner proposed a few years back and worked with a series of government officials in various governments on addressing the issue of horizontal professionalism in project management. Whether it's new projects or existing projects, you need to tap into those private sector intellectual and expertise resources in order to bring those government-owned companies' projects at par with what investors expect. So speak the same language, provide the right numbers, put in the basic underpinnings that are required to develop those projects. And then you can reach the type of, not just the paper imaginary, not just the dream big element, but actually build big.